Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around some form of football content during lockdown. My name is Suj.
And my name is James.
And we have all sorts of random types of football content going at our listeners at the moment, James. Today is People's Poll Day.
Yeah, this is up there with random. There's some serious research I had to go into this one a little bit, actually.
Yeah, we're going to get into the topic that actually won in a second, and I think it's going to be a fascinating 20, 30 minutes, however long we talk about it, before we get our tongues tied over names that we cannot pronounce, James. But tell everybody what the two options were that didn't end up winning first.
So I went with just three options. I'd said on the stream Saturday, three options, and I hadn't decided on the fourth. And on Sunday morning, I still couldn't decide on the fourth. I thought, I'm going to end up throwing some shit in and people are going to vote for it, and I don't want to do that. So I just went with the three options. I went with two domestic clubs, both in the Championship at the moment, with various financial issues. Charlton Athletic, a real concern at the moment. And Derby County, not so much a concern in terms of their future, but certainly a concern in terms of certain things that have been happening and where certain monies have been coming from, particularly in relation to, say, the signing of Wayne Rooney.
Mm-hmm.
The winner was Olympiakos, and their current threat of being expelled from the Greek Hellenis Super League and relegated to its second division.
Yeah, so that's the equivalent of going down to the Championship.
Correct.
The reason I make that point is because there were a number of articles that make it seem so dramatic. Olympiakos to be thrown out of the top tier of Greek football. It's not what's happening to them potentially is not what happened to Rangers in Scotland, for example. They're not going all the way down to the bottom. They're dropping down one division at the end of the day. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think this punishment that has been threatened is that big.
No, it's more similar with... I mean, Rangers were always going to come back. For those who are not aware, Rangers got thrown down to Scotland's fourth division, essentially.
Yep.
And actually, many Rangers fans might find that their journey back to what they are now was quite a fun one, having played all the teams through Scottish football, essentially. I think Juventus went down to maybe only Serie B. Could have been the third division, maybe. But similarly, they were always going to come back. The Juventus scandal was obviously a massive one. And Juventus were obviously helped by the fact people like Buffon hung around and stayed, right? So there was never going to be any danger of them not coming back. And there would be no danger of Olympiakos not coming back. I would imagine that if they got thrown down to the second division, they'd win the title again within 3 years because of the size of the football club. And perhaps how it works within Greek football.
So this season, as it stands, they're unbeaten. And they were 12 or 14 points clear. I'm pretty sure it was 12 points clear at the top of the table. So, I agree with you that within 3 years they would win the title again. They also have the largest roster of players on their books, similar to like a Chelsea, for example. They just have so many players out on loan, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail. But it's one of the reasons why they feel like they can control Greek football at the moment. Now, just a bit of backstory for people that don't know the full details. And like you said, it's suddenly come very much onto the radar more recently because of the threat of this demotion and financial fine as well. The actual match-fixing allegation dates back to 2015.
And before, but the one they're really looking at now is 15,
The one that was investigated in a lot of detail. Actually, a lot of people were exonerated or no charges were brought. I don't think they were necessarily exonerated, but they didn't bring any charges, is that match in 2015. But the allegations of corruption date back to 2011. So we're now talking the best part of 9 years of dodgy dealings, shady activity, and corruption, the likes of which blew me away. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't just a case of bribing a referee to give a red card or a goalkeeper to throw the ball in the back of his own net. We're talking about players, referees, owners of other clubs, officials within the Greek FA, officials within the government. You're talking about so many different people involved.
Correct. I think first thing to say is, for those who are perhaps not as aware, Olympiakos are the biggest and most powerful football club in Greece. And during that period that you talk of, Suj, from 2011, they won 7 straight league titles, I think 5 Greek Cups as well. Probably couldn't get the right referees for the 2 Greek Cup competitions that they didn't win. What's mad is I looked back a bit further at Greek history, going all the way back to 1927. There were only 6 teams that have ever won that division.
Wow.
One of those clubs won it like then in like 1927 or something, and another one won it once in the 70s. Essentially, you've got 4 clubs basically in Greece. You've got PAOK in Salonika, where people might have seen the incident in 2016 where a game against AEK was abandoned because the PAOK chairman walked onto the pitch to confront the referee with a gun in his pocket, quite visibly as well. AEK are basically the 3rd biggest side, and they've only won the title 12 times. Then you've got Panathinaikos, who's quite historical, but they've only won the title twice since reaching the Champions League semi-finals in the mid-90s. And Olympiakos, in terms of numbers, are well away now, and completely dominated this century.
Yep.
Your man in charge, Evangelos Marinakis, is that correct, Suj?
Evangelos Marinakis, yes.
We'll go with Marinakis. I'm sorry, it's all Greek to me,
Marinakis.
So these controversial timings and dealings of things essentially does go back to when he took over in charge. Now, do you know where he came from, Suj, to then become chairman of Olympiakos?
In terms of what his business background was?
Well, yeah, you could do that first, actually.
Well, he's involved in shipping primarily. So he's an owner or part owner of the port in Greece, in Athens, which is where the majority of goods are coming in and out of the
goods.
Island. Yeah, right. So he has control of incoming goods into the country, which means that he also has control of contraband substances potentially coming in and out of the country. So a lot of his wealth has come from that. Now, there's a mafia links, or he's part of organized crime potentially, and lots of other allegations that we can look into. And there was a board member of Olympiakos who's now serving time in prison for 2 tons of cocaine being found in one of his container ships at the port yard, having come in potentially on Marinakis' ship. So there's a lot of drug involvement in this money somewhere along the way. Yes. Allegedly. I feel like we should just end every sentence with allegedly.
Everything in this podcast is allegedly based on shit that me and Suj have read and is perhaps a one-sided story. Yeah, correct. He worked for the Greek FA before taking over as chairman of Olympiakos. So you can imagine at that point, he's already got links and ties and stuff, right? Which are not necessarily above board. There's an incident in 2012 where it was believed that Marinakis had, rather than necessarily approaching players, they were getting like handpicks and choosing who referees were and stuff. So there was a game against Xanthi, who are a side who qualified for the Europa League a couple of times. And Marinakis approached the referee and said, I need you to give us favourable decisions, allegedly. The referee was refused, just like, I'm not doing that shit. Xanthi won the game, and then a couple of months later, this poor referee's bakery coincidentally got blown up. Unproven that it was any link to that, but that is the suspicion that you don't agree with Olympiakos. This is what will happen to you.
Bakery no longer exists.
Correct. So the wide-held belief is that they were getting a lot of referees on side. Now, the game that you mentioned, Suj, from 2015 and that period, which is being investigated again, was a 2-1 team against a team called Tromitus. Now, I managed to dig out the highlights of that particular game. It's about 8 minutes worth, are quite easy to find. There was nothing suspicious about it, as far as I can see. Did you think different, Suj?
I don't know. The goal that they conceded was could have done better. The one where the keeper came out and it went over his head.
So the goal they conceded rather than the two they scored.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make sense then, does it?
No, true. It wasn't blatantly obvious. No, I'll agree.
No, I think if you came across it, you wouldn't think anything wrong with that football match. Is worth saying. Goals
based on 8 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Olympiakos were getting blatant refereeing decisions all game long, but then you can even say that a traumatist goal that was scored, all right, it was clearly onside, but Lino could have stuck his flag up, right?
Yeah, true.
And nobody would have thought any different, maybe. So I don't know. They'll put it this way: there's nothing obvious to say referees were in the back pocket here or whatever. But it was obviously a lot of dealings, particularly, I think, from 2011 to 2015, they were being investigated for. So they all went to court and they all got acquitted, Suj, is that right?
Yeah, everybody was acquitted. Originally, Marinakis was released on bail. He had to fork out €200,000 in bail and report back to a police station every 15 days. But ultimately, no charges were brought.
So why is it coming back again?
I think now UEFA have reopened the case as opposed to anything else. I think internally within Greece it had been resolved, but UEFA hadn't closed their case potentially on it, and now they're back on it.
So the interesting link with UEFA was the general secretary that was appointed in the following year was a gentleman called Theodore Theodoris. So good they nearly named him twice, right?
Yeah.
And Theodore Theodoris also happens to be the vice president at Olympiakos. The suspicion being, much like when Platini was believed to be turning a very blind eye to what was happening with Juventus, UEFA were also turning a blind eye to what was happening in Greece because Theodoris had a position of power, essentially. Now, obviously, the who's in charge of FIFA has obviously changed hands since now, and they want to reopen it. I don't know if Theodoris is or isn't still involved. I think he is in terms of in his placement in UEFA, but I think his placement there with some of the people that were there before is why it didn't really get investigated. That's what I seem to think from the research that I've done on it. So they essentially it just looks like, if you look at the story in terms of what you can read article-wise on that, the perception you will have afterwards is they've got everyone in their pockets.
Yep.
That's it. And obviously, especially in Greece, some of the stories you mentioned about the loan system, Suj, right? So obviously we know Chelsea stockpile players and send them out on loan to get experience and then have transfer value, etc. These guys, it's well believed that Olympiakos is sending players out on loan to not even just top division Greek clubs, but second, third division and that. And it's all for future favours to get them in terms of onside, etc. There was one game in a third division match where they sent the Olympiakos hooligans down there to cause riots and put pressure on the referee for a certain game. Or
they wanted sanctions to be brought. They were that, and they forced that riot to happen.
Yeah.
They have wiretap phone evidence that Marinakis knew that this was going to happen and was fully aware of it. They had two phone wiretaps for various people, one of which was Marinakis, and they were using burner mobile phones. So they had these cheap prepaid throwaway mobile phones. Now, one of the guy's phones was in the name of a Pakistani immigrant, and the others was in the name of a Chinese immigrant. And eventually they got wiretapped. Now, there is no reason for a multimillionaire like that to be needing to use a dodgy burner mobile phone unless he is conducting illicit activities, let's say. So they were banged to rights. The evidence that they have is pretty damning against these people. The depth to which it goes is pretty damning, which makes me just, if you look at financial fair play or fit and proper persons, what's the point of all of it? Because the ultimate end is that he owns another football club in Nottingham Forest.
Bless you, Suj.
Excuse me.
Before we come on to possible impact of Forest, because there is one, I still can't get my head around, if all these approaches to referees, etc., were happening, that nobody went down in 2015. I don't understand that. He paid like about £200,000 bail, didn't he, to get himself off? But then, like, the charges, it's like it just got washed away, or it never got really dealt with. I don't understand, from what I've read, how whether the chairman Marinakis was specifically involved or not. Certainly, some people were. There's too many people who have spoken up. Be it players understanding, referees particularly. Looked like we're just trying to get in every referee's pocket, basically, to give Olympiakos influence in a football match.
They probably didn't even need it. That's the thing.
Well, absolutely.
Right without it.
You ever listen to Marcel Desailly talking about Marseille when they had similar in 90? I think it was either 92 or 93 in Ligue 1, where the Marseille owners got done, didn't they, for bribing the officials and that, or it might have been players on the opposition. And I remember I've seen an interview before with Desailly. He's like, "Are you mad? We'd have won anyway."
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
If you think about, I've got Wikipedia up in front of me here, James, right? Let me read some of these out, and then you can, we will come back to your question. How did nobody get done for this? Because this is not like small stuff. You got Marinakis, right? Involved in organised crime, blackmail, aiding and abetting explosions, bribery, fraud. The status of him at the time was he was banned from any football activity, €200,000 bail, and he had to report to a police station every 15 days. You've got another guy who's in the HFF Council. Fraud, blackmail, bribery, organised crime. Banned from leaving Greece, banned from football, €50,000 bail. Next guy, fraud, blackmail, bribery, organised crime. Exactly the same punishment. And you keep going down. You've got owners of various football clubs. The Olympiakos owner, bribery, banned from any football activity. Atromitos owner, bribery. He didn't get a punishment. Veria FC owner, bribery, banned from football. Like, everybody had some sanction thrown at them, and everybody was involved in bribery and blackmail of some sort. Now, I just think that we talk about it a lot. Shit walks, money talks. Greece is unfortunately a country that's struggled financially, especially post the crisis in 2008. Everybody knows, like, it's not a well-off place necessarily. You've got the millionaires and billionaires there with money. They just can pull the strings because they have the money and other people don't. I think a lot of it.
Is it basically just mafia run, basically?
Yeah. And you also have the mafia. Organised crime has links to Golden Dawn, which is the right wing organisation there as well. The neo-Nazis locally, and then obviously they'll have ties in with the ultras within the fan groups that control a lot of the stadiums and the fans as well, which we've seen with Italy and places like that. So everything is interlinked, completely controlled. Yeah.
It feels like PAOK and AEK, who have both won 2 titles very recently, or won a title each, rather, of starting to get in towards the power of this as well. And Panathinaikos, through historical, always going to be there and thereabouts. So there are 4 teams, basically, who will regularly compete for that title in one way or another. AEK and PAOK are trying to become more powerful. I mean, that incident where the PAOK chairman comes on the pitch in 2016 is insane. They get a goal disallowed after about 7 minutes, and he's like, "Yeah, fuck it, I'm going to go on the pitch for a gun." What?
I'm not going to lie, James. When I don't bet often on football. I'll be honest with you. It's like,
but you could bet on Greek football.
Once every 2 or 3 weeks, I might put together a little accumulator with a £5 or £6. I'll always look out for Panathinaikos or Olympiakos or Greek odds, because it's such a one-sided league in the way that they're like probably similar to the Spanish league or whatever. You've got 3 or 4 big players. You never get good odds, but you don't often lose your money.
Noted. So if Marinakis obviously had all these charges held against him in 2015-16, I understand that in English football we have this thing called this fit and proper persons test.
Yeah.
Right. How did he pass it?
That's a very, very good question. Absolutely no idea.
How did he pass it?
money.
So Marinakis, for those who people don't know, is now the owner of Nottingham Forest as well as Olympiakos.
Correct.
He's not poor, Marinakis. He's valued at around about $560 million, I believe. And
$500 million.
In fairness, since he's gone into Nottingham Forest, they're like 10 points off West Brom at the moment. So might be one of those that could complain if promotion for Leeds and West Brom happens, for example. They're looking to expand the city grounds, develop the side which you wouldn't normally see where their camera is, make that a nice 2-tier stand. It's going to take the capacity up to 38,000.
Yep, that'll be a decent stadium.
Yeah, so I think at Forest, there's actually positive signs. However, one, I go back to the first question: how has he been passed off?
No idea.
And should we be concerned that sort of thing is happening in the Championship? I don't know, because Forest are doing better, aren't they?
Doing better because of him?
I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not suggesting that Forest are paying anybody, but since he's gone in there, Nottingham Forest have been better. Now, Nottingham Forest are a football club that should, at minimum, be at the upper levels of the Championship. You know, well, if they're looking to make their stadium 38,000, it's a Premier League-sized football club, isn't it? Let's be honest.
And if you look at history and legacy, sure, they should and can come back to the Premier League and would maybe fit in over a period of time. But yeah, I mean, the issue here is never, when owners first come into a club in the first few seasons, even the likes of Randy Lerner or the Icelandic owners that we had, it's never an issue at the beginning. Everyone's always excited at the beginning, James. It's how quickly the wheels fall off when these guys get bored with their toys. As soon as they get bored with their toys, the clubs seem to descend very quickly into no money's invested on the pitch, and then you go into free fall. If he was to pull all his money out now because he just got bored or he had to go to jail in Greece and he was like, you know what, I'm going to cash in all my assets, that's when the wheels come off. So, yeah, I mean, it looks rosy now, but I'd like to see sustained investment over a long period of time before you can say that it's been successful.
Well, if these charges therefore then stick for Marinakis, he will have to release control of Nottingham Forest.
Mm-hmm.
He will be, essentially, he'll get banned from football for life.
Yes.
It's basically what will happen. So, flipping that on its head then, should Nottingham Forest fans be concerned about the future of their football club, bearing in mind the current climate, etc.?
I probably would say no, James. I'll tell you why. Like, I just don't think that it's that big. Nottingham Forest is not that big a football club, like perhaps say the size of the Newcastle takeover now. So I think that in the market out there right now, there are plenty of people with enough money to do what Marinakis was going to do for Nottingham Forest. I think it would be and is still an attractive enough prospect for any other investor to want to come in and take over. So unless he tries to price the club at a ridiculous price that he's not going to get, which he's not going to be able to do because he's going to have to relinquish control, I actually don't think it's going to be such an issue. You're not looking for someone to find £200 or £300 million to buy your club with the state that it's in. So I think actually it's not going to be the worst thing in the world for Nottingham Forest.
No, I think he bought Forest for under 100 million. However, the sort of let's say the type of person that might be spending 100 million at this moment, would it be fair to say that they are less likely to because of, we're not talking about the Saudis at Newcastle with 230 billion or whatever. We're talking about a guy who's not even worth £1 billion that bought Nottingham Forest. So those kind of people are actually going to be spending 10% of their, well, in Marinakis' case, actually it was about 20% actually. You're actually going to be spending that sort of wealth
He probably did have payment terms over time and he would have leveraged the deal in all sorts of different ways. I honestly think James, like the rich will get off the back of the coronavirus crisis and the financial crisis. The rich will get richer and the poor to working class will stay where they are because the value of a lot of assets have dropped, right? The stock market's dropped massively. Every single stock market has dropped massively. So if you now, as James Linden, go and put 500 quid into the stock market and it triples in the next 12 months, great, you made £1,500, right? Decent return. But Joe Bloggs, who goes and puts 500,000 into the stock market, is going to go and make $1.5 million. And a lot of people will put their money into assets that have been devalued as a result of it. If Nottingham Forest is in a crisis situation because he has to sell, he's not going to get fair value because people are going to know that he's under pressure to sell. And people will be looking for assets that they can pick up on the cheap. And I think a lot of wealthy people will be looking for assets they can pick up on the cheap, whether it's real estate, stocks and shares, and in this situation, even a football club. There will be one or two out there, I think, that will be up for it. That's my personal opinion. So I wouldn't be overly worried. With that kind of deal number, I think someone would. And Nottingham Forest has an incredible history. It's not perhaps got the width of it. It's not spread over 100 years, but that period under Clough and what have you, every football fan knows about it. Right? I'm not the most historical, but I know about Clough's seasons and stuff and what have you. So they have that history and legacy that people will know of Nottingham Forest Football Club.
I've got 2 European Cups. Not many other clubs can claim to that.
Exactly, yeah.
The other just note kind of on the present of Olympiakos. Obviously, they have got Wolves in the last 16 in Europa League. First leg was 1-1 behind closed doors in Greece. We don't, at this stage, know if there's any potential effect on this in terms of the impact of Wolves, in terms of whether there would actually be a buy. There is no suggestion that Olympiakos have done anything illegal in Europe this year. Just to remind Arsenal fans that Olympiakos did beat them at the Emirates fair and square. Aubameyang just should have scored. But I guess, they'd get thrown out. Would they get thrown out instantly? I don't know.
I don't think a lot of Arsenal fans are too bitter about that. I think they do know that they
No, I think they're still upset about it.
Well, they blew it. Yeah, I mean, it's unrelated to this season, so it's a bit difficult to how far back do you go all of a sudden? So if now Spurs found guilty of something 3 seasons ago, should it impact a competition this year? I'm all for punishments being doled out for the start of a competition. So throw them out of next seasons or the next 3 seasons. Yeah, fine. Doing it in the middle of a competition or something that's unrelated to that competition, I find a little bit difficult to stomach. So if they had match fixed the game against Arsenal to get themselves into the game against Wolves, sure, kick them out of the game against Wolves. But this is related to something from 5 seasons ago now.
I'm inclined to agree if the punishment is obviously fit and proper for the chairman, if he's found guilty, etc. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah. I mean, I would really encourage people, if they have the time, which maybe many will right now, to read into what happened, because we've talked about it for kind of 15 minutes. There are so many intricate details into this story about different people within the FA. They were pressuring positions to be granted to certain people over others. The web of influence was very, very broad. And like we said, it touched on referees, owners of clubs, officials within the Greek FA, and so on. It was very, very deep. Even the government, politicians within the government, James. Incredible.
Greece seems to me like a dark web that I wasn't aware of. As far as I knew, it was just somewhere you went on holiday and had a good kebab. That was it. But yeah, and I was shocked looking into this from originally thinking, oh, that's a good people's poll topic, to actually reading into it and going, I'm not sure where to start with this, because there's an undercurrent of history of it's power. It's all power related in one way or another through the politics in Greece, the football in Greece, a number of things. You mentioned about the shipping ports and that. It's not all above board. I think most of the heroin's coming in through Greece, isn't it? Basically, seems to be what I read, allegedly.
And Marinakis, ultimately, he's making good money out of Olympiakos as a business, in terms of that's one of the big drivers behind it, right? A lot of football clubs in the UK, you end up investing more than you make back out of it because of the cost of players and infrastructure like stadiums and what have you. He's making money out of Olympiakos. I mean, every season without fail, picking up the 20 million euros for winning the league and getting into the Champions League, plus all of the additionals that come with it. They're doing all right.
Yeah, they're the most powerful in terms of they can actually sign decent players. I mean, Valbuena has been there, hasn't he? There's a few others anyway. They've bought some good players from in and around Europe that you might not expect to go to and play in Greece. I can't remember, it's skipped my mind, but it's an interesting story to look involving Oliver Capo, who played for the France full team in the late 90s. I can't remember the story, it's gone from my head, but that's worth researching as well in relation to his ties into Greece football. Because he basically came out and whistleblowed on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Saying like, this shit's going on.
Yeah. There we go. I suppose it doesn't get the spotlight because it's one of the smaller leagues in European football. We have the big five who get so much of the limelight that this kind of stuff probably gets brushed under the carpet a little.
I think so. And then perhaps like what you said in terms of the fact that the country hasn't had the financial backing as a resource, as a country to push its clubs. Because if it's all political, I imagine Olympiakos have got government links and whatnots, allegedly. There was a spell when the Turkish clubs like Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, they looked like they were really going to come into money and push on. So I think people looking in that part of the world were always probably looking at Turkish football more than Greek football. That wasn't always the case. Like the Panathinaikos are a very historical football club. If you'd asked football fans around Europe in like the 70s, 80s, you'd have said a club from that part of the world that have all said Panathinaikos. Wouldn't have been mentioning Turkish clubs and the like. So, but Olympiakos, yeah, have got all the power there. I think even if they did end up getting relegated, they'd be back quick. They'd be back on top pretty quick. Unless the people in power no longer had that power.
Well, yeah, the club was stripped of them and they were forced to sell, and that would be a completely different kettle of fish. So we'll keep our eyes peeled and see what happens. I think it could have some ramifications across ethics and financial fair play and fit and proper persons, but we shall see.
Yeah, I still can't get my head around how he would have passed the fit and proper person test.
No,
I think we need to do a pod on that at some point.
Yeah. I think he did fail first time. There were a few reservations and he didn't get through, and then they had to have some meetings with the other owners of championship clubs and what have you. So yeah, I'll do a bit of reading into that fit and proper persons test, James, because to be honest, I haven't looked into it in the most amount of detail. What is involved with that? That's
part of what would have been the thing with Charlton as well. You know, you sell a football club for £1. Who's buying a football club? It's like no one really looked at it. So
yeah, very interesting.
I don't know, and obviously it links back to Berry. So yeah, is it Dale, wasn't it? How did he get hold of that club when all his businesses elsewhere were like being liquidated and that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but I think you're right on a whole. I don't think Nottingham Forest fans should be worried.
No, I don't think so at all. There we go. That was it, People's Poll, guys. Thank you for joining us for a little rundown Greek football, and we will be back at you this week tomorrow with our weekly quiz. And this week we'll be looking at the League Cup, the history of the League Cup. James has got some questions on the go and ready to rock and roll. So do a bit of research into that if you have time before our weekly quiz. Tomorrow evening, it's Champ Man FPL time, another live stream from James. Game week 11, Legs 11 is here, James. So game week 11 for all of us. If you've got your transfers at the ready, make sure you know what you're doing. And then on Thursday, we've got a throwback Thursday looking at Middlesbrough from the 1990s when they got relegated, having missed the fixture against Blackburn. So we'll be looking back at that Middlesbrough side with Ravanelli and Janino and what have you. Interesting time at the Riverside.
Motherfuckers.
Okay, I thought we didn't practice.
I wasn't ready.
we didn't practice it, but it still came out.
I think you've got to come at it with a certain Riverside. Otherwise, you just don't do it enthusiastically.
Nah. Where did that come from, James?
It came from a song that the wife played to me, and then I knew it. But basically, whenever I used to be watching the game and the commentator would say, "Oh, we're at the Riverside," she would just instantly say, "Motherfucker." And that's where it came from. And then I threw it into the first stream and people loved it. But now I've got people telling me they have to put the Saturday streams on mute. So I might have to look towards PG streams on a Saturday, maybe.
Yeah, just change it to Mofos or something, and we're good.
Mofos, yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll think about it.
And on Friday, another Ask James live stream. Saturday, another stream with the Champman FPL stuff going on as well. So there's a lot of content coming at you. Do make sure that if you want to catch all of it, wherever you're listening to the audio or the videos, you subscribe and hit the notification bell to make sure you get alerted as soon as we put something out. Anything else to add, James?
Nah, have a nice day. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a nice sunny day, so go and enjoy. Ciao for now.
Cue music, man, child.
35 minutes. Cool.
Job done.
Right, I'll send this to you on Slack, and I'll upload the video now.
I start.